Hey everyone, this is Knight, and today I'm bringing you the beginning of my Lyrical deck profile series. I actually built, or updated I should say, quite a few decks with the advent of Festival Booster, and of course we are going to be starting off with one of my favorites, that is going to be Herminia, the powerful deck from BT2 Lyrical. So, I guess just to give you a quick overview of the deck, I believe I said this in my last deck profile, but Herminia is very much an aggro, rush, win as quickly as possible kind of deck. It reminds me of Nova Grapplers from the old Vanguard clan days, where you kind of just blow through all of your resources, get multi-attack, and swing for really big numbers, and that is kind of your win con. But unfortunately, it is a very piece-reliant deck. It does kind of fight itself, so right now it's still not the greatest. It can definitely steal a few wins here and there, but for the most part, it is going to be quite a struggle if you try taking this to any sort of serious tournament. But who knows, with the new dress up we're getting in Lyrical Set 3, or Set 5, gosh, it's already 5 set, or Set 4 I think, technically. Maybe the deck will become playable, or even viable, who knows. Dress-ups have done really funky things. Alright, so we are going to be starting off, of course, with just the ride line. We are just playing the powerful starter. It doesn't really matter, it can be anything. We're playing the full powerful ride line, just because Herminia is a deck that can't really use any other ride line, not very well. But let's go ahead and go over the skills. So obviously just starting, this is just a D starter. So the first one is Lyrical. She is a act once per turn. You Soul Blast one and discard a card to draw a card. So that's probably the worst possible cycle in the world, where you have to discard before you draw. You would always prefer to draw and then discard, but this card isn't good, so unfortunately we have to deal with that. But the main reason you're doing that is so that you can actually Soul Blast, because the second ability is the Powerful ability, which Powerful is active whenever your soul has no cards. But when you want to ride into the grade 2, you can ride for free. In this deck, the way I've built it, you don't actually always want to do that, but sometime, if it's available to you, you probably just always go for it. The grade 2 essentially has the same skill. It does get 2k when it attacks, but that's not going to be coming up very often. Sometimes you put an 8k booster behind it, it hits for 20k, which is over defensive, so that's okay. But the main skill is that her powerful allows you to ride into Herminia without actually discarding. And then Herminia, her skills, she is plus 5k whenever you counterblast. That's an act, not once per turn. And then her powerful ability is at the end of the battle attacks. If you have no cards in your soul and no face-up damage, you can discard a card from your hand. You stand one of your powerful rear guards, and then the next time you would counterblast this turn, it gets reduced by 1. So you're basically always going to be having 4 attacks every single turn. Do note that Herminia and all of her support is not locked behind your opponent being grade 3. Well, there is one card, but it doesn't really matter. But most of it is not locked behind your opponent being grade 3. So as soon as you ride into Herminia, you can go ahead and hit the ground running. Preferably you're already running at that point. So Herminia is honestly just trying to be your last push. As I believe we saw in one of my fight videos, that's kind of how you want to be playing the deck, where you want to just rush as quickly as possible, deal as much quick damage as quickly as possible, and just rush them down. Alright, so starting off with the grade 3s, we are just going to be playing the 3 copies of Persona Ride, as well as the 4th copy of Persona Ride in the form of the Regalius piece. So Persona Ride is pretty important in this deck. It helps you hit those numbers so that hopefully on your turn 4 you're actually able to close things out. You've pushed them to the point where they are really either using up all their cards to guard or at a really high damage. So the Persona Ride is really just there to close things out. I will say that this is one of the few decks that actually prefers to use the Chalice instead of the grade 3 re-ride, because if you do actually re-ride, that puts another card in soul, and you have to have another card either in your hand or on board that can actually get rid of that one card that you get in soul from re-riding. So actually decking, or if you draw into both of these, the Chalice is actually much more important than the other copy of Persona Ride. Usually you probably only need one to close things out, or actually use one before you get killed and clobbered. So that's going to do it for the grade 3s. So the grade 2 lineup is where things have actually changed quite a bit for the deck. So we're starting off with one of the main playmakers of the deck. This is Rely or Rely or something. I think I called her Rely last time. But anyways, she has... This card is just so good for the deck. It does everything that the deck is trying to do. The first is an act once per turn, Soul Blast 1. Choose one of your Vanguard, gets plus 5k. So we have a meaningful use for Soul, which is something that we need to do because once we ride into grade 3, we need a way to get that last Soul out from underneath our Vanguard, and this card gives us a very good way to use it, giving our Vanguard an extra 5k, making it a 28 or 18 so that it hits for a very nice number. So the main skill that we also use this for is the powerful ability, which is when it attacks a Vanguard, you counterblast 2, it gets plus 2k, 10k until the end of the turn, and then if your Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, it performs drive checks until the end of that battle. So you get theoretically 4 drive checks if you have all the correct combo pieces, and she just Rely just keeps getting bigger and bigger every single time that she swings and uses that skill because she gets 10k, she keeps it, she restands, she keeps the 10k, and then if you can use the skill again, you will be able to get another 10k. So she is very regularly swinging for 30 to 40k every single time she attacks. Alright, so finally getting into some new cards from the Festival Booster. I'm opting to currently play 3 of the Cycle card. What color is your wish? So she is just your basic Cycle card. When she's discarded from hand during the ride phase, you Soul Blast 1, put her on the bottom of the deck, and draw a card. So basically you get a free ride. And then when she is placed on rear, if you Persona Ride, you Counterblast 1, you give your Vanguard the skill that all your front row units get plus 5k during this turn. So you might think it's a little bit weird that we're playing Cycle cards in a deck that has a ride line that rides for free. So why are we doing this? So the main reason we're doing this is because the grade 1 skill sucks complete and total ass. So if you draw into your opening hand, you would much rather use that card. You would much rather pitch this card and use a soul for her to draw another card than to use this stupid ass skill. Because if you just think about it in terms of card economy, you are ditching 1 card for ride deck, and you're getting +1, so you're getting the card back. So you're ending your turn with 6 cards in hand. Whereas if you use the soul for this stupid bitch, I guess, you're discarding 1, you're going down to 5, and then you're using her skill, discarding another one and drawing another, so you're ending with 5 cards in hand. Whereas if you just would discard this, you are having 6 cards in hand, which is just insanely better. And sometimes even if you have the free ride, I would just discard this just to get the cycle, just to get that Soul Blast out of there, because your biggest issue with this deck is getting the soul empty. If you do not empty out your soul, you are a vanilla deck. You basically have no skills, none of your things are online. So just having another way to another consistency booster to getting cards out of your soul is just super essential for the deck. I would always play this card at 3 or 4 unless we get something better or something more consistent to Soul Blast. Alright, so another new card from the Festival Booster is going to be this girl, Alpha. So she is unfortunately a 9k body, which we're going to be explaining why that is. But she has the powerful ability, which is if your soul has no cards, it gets an extra 10k. So that's her powerful ability, but she does have that powerful ability, so just keep that in mind. So her second ability is when she's chosen by the ability of your Vanguard with either Herminia or has her in the name, you counterblast 1 and draw a card. So the reason she has 9k is so that she can actually be searched out by Hazoret, which makes things very unfortunate for people playing her in Herminia, because that extra 5k or the extra 1k actually does matter quite a bit, because that means that she does not hit over a defensive by herself, because she is 19 and not 20, and a lot of the times that she's getting boosted by a 8k, that makes her 17 or 27, which also does not hit for a nice magic number. So this is all Hazoret's fault, and we blame her for everything and for all of our troubles, but she is still a decent card. She's always going to be a 19. If you're going first, you can slap her down, assuming you're able to empty out the soul. That's hitting for 19, which is still a decent number against a 8k Vanguard when they're a grade 1. Now, that second skill isn't really going to come up very often, but do note that if you stand her with Hermina's skill, you basically get to draw 1 for free, because Herminia is going to be reducing that Counterblast 1 to Counterblast 0, so you do actually get to draw a card at least. But most of the time, she is like not one of your optimal stand targets. You would prefer to stand Rely, prefer to just rely on her. But if it push comes to shove and you do have to restand this, at least to get an extra draw, which is definitely something that the deck needs. Alright, and so for the last of the grade 2s, we do have the 4 copies of Nala. So Nala is just here doing double duty, but she is probably one of the worst cards in the deck. So her ability is that when she's placed on rear during the main phase, you Counterblast 1, choose a card from your soul, call it to an open rearguard circle, and then you do actually have to discard from your hand for each card in your soul after that, but most of the time you're going to have an empty soul, so you're just going to discard 0. And then she does have the ability where if she attacks a grade 3 or greater Vanguard, if you are in Powerful, she gets plus 5k until the end of turn, so that does stack. So if you swing with her, she goes 15, and then restand her, swing with her again, she goes to 20. So theoretically, probably your worst potential attacker, but she is there if you do need her in a pinch. The main reason we're playing her is she does double duty in terms of using up your Counterblast, because you need to have 0 face-up Counterblast, and she does also help you empty out your soul, so that is the main reason why she's just in the deck. So once again, another card that if we get something better to empty out the soul or to use Counterblast on, she is instantly getting cut. Alright, so moving on into the grade 1s, we are starting off with the 4 copies of Musetta, a very vital card. Honestly, one of the cards that honestly helped save the deck. So she has 1 ability, the powerful ability. When she boosts a grade 3 or greater Vanguard Herminia, if you are in powerful, basically, all your front row units get plus 2k. Whoa, that actually does matter for a little bit, because it helps you make numbers, because she's essentially a 10k booster for the Vanguard, so that helps you hit numbers. And then at the end of that battle, you can actually put her on the bottom of the deck, and you get to countercharge 1, which you might think, whoa, we get a countercharge? That's not good, because we need face down damage, right? But that countercharge does mean that you can actually use a lot of skills. So essentially what you're doing with this deck is you are swinging Counterblast 2, get plus 10k, drive check, and then you're swinging the Herminia boosted, plus 2k to front row, drive checks, and then at the end of the battle, you want to proc Hermina's skill first, because you still need to have 0 face-up damage. If you proc this first, you can't proc this. So you proc her, you discard 1, restand, and then you proc this, put her to the bottom, countercharge 1, counterblast 1 less. So this would normally counterblast 2, but since you have 1 open damage and it only casts counterblast 1, you can actually use a skill again to counterblast 1 and get her the drive check. So she's very essential for that. Theoretically, you can use her for just getting your counterblast back, so you can actually use more skills, but most of the time I'm just using her to use Rely's skill twice in a single turn, which is the pressure that you kind of need in order to close games out. Alright, so next up we do have a very, very good card, which is the Signy, probably your best booster in the deck. So let's go ahead and go over her skills. So her first ability is if your soul has no cards, you can counterblast 1, choose one of your other units and give it 5k. That activates when she boosts, which she'll be boosting most of the time. So that's an okay skill. It does help you hit numbers a little bit. It gives you just a little bit of but the main reason you're using is probably just to get rid of counterblast so that you have 0 face-ups. But the main reason she is good is because at the end of the battle she boosts. If you have a powerful Vanguard, you can restand this unit, and then technically you do have to choose a card from your soul and put a drop, and most of the time it should be empty. So she is actually, if you are in a pinch, you can actually use Signy to empty out your soul, but if you're doing that, it really feels bad. But the main reason she is there is because she boosts your rear guard that attacks, she restands herself, and then you restand thing in front of her with Hermina, and you let her boost again. And then theoretically, you could use her skill for free, but most of the time, the thing in front of her is probably a bit more better to use that free counterblast on. So that's she's mainly here just to be a recyclable booster, which just helps you hit those numbers over and over again. Alright, so just finishing off a couple of the things. We are playing the 3 PGs, playing the Elementaria. Technically, you don't really need it. Sometimes you do want to have more bodies, and this is technically not a body, whereas this is if you are in a pinch. So it's really up to preference. There are Stride deck sets, but you know, I think you've got a lot more problems against Stride deck sets than just Elementaria. Alright, and so for the trigger lineup, we are opting for 8 crit. I think last time I called this a budget deck because you actually do not want to play the soul in crit, because obviously you want to have no soul. The 5k is just that much better, because sometimes you do need to call these down, and 5k is always going to be better than 4k. And of course, for our 3 trigger, we are an offensive deck, so we are just playing the fronts. It's nice to have the extra shield value, and even though you're swinging rear van, you are swinging rear after that. So front triggers are almost always live and giving you a nice 30k to your board, unless, I guess, your first couple turns. But even in your first couple turns, you're probably calling down some rears, and they might actually be able to get front power. After that, we are just playing 4 vanilla heals. Nothing special about that. This decision is a little bit up to you, I suppose. The OT, now that we have more than just one for Lyrical, or I guess more than 2. Right now I'm playing red OT because theoretically it does make your other column, which is not as big, a little bit stronger, because it can swing twice, and then lets you get those 5 attacks, as opposed to just the 4. But there is an argument to be said for playing blue OT. It is just a little bit more versatile. It's an extra crit, and it does let you fetch something back in to your hand, which this deck does have problems with. It very quickly and easily runs out of steam, especially if your board is getting retired. So I would recommend blue OT or red OT for the deck. I don't think Lyrical does too much for the deck. You could use it, but your numbers are already really big. I mean, it just makes them from very difficult to guard to like impossible to guard. But I would say probably blue or red. Right now I've been testing red, and it doesn't really come up that much, but blue is also an option, in case I haven't said that like 5 times. Alright, so that is going to do it for my Herminia deck profile. I'm not going to do a test hand because the deck hasn't really changed its game plan at all since that last video. If you do want to see kind of what the deck is supposed to be doing, you can go back and watch that video, watch the test hand there. But that's going to do it for me. I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to do all these YouTube things, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.